Deon, in retrospect, how fortunate were you to have Bo Freeler as a leader in that group, and who can kind of pick up the mantle? I know we've seen glimpses from Cooper and all that, and I know how close they were, but can you reflect a little bit on what that value was, not just of him going out and playing all the time, but and how hard it is to kind of makeshift replace that?
Yeah, I think Bo, he was the heartbeat, you know what I mean, of the team the past 2 years, being a 2-year captain for us, senior captain for us, and just everybody knew how much he poured into this building and this team and his teammates. So extremely proud of just how he went out, and you really hope that the guys that are, behind him saw how he went about his business and helped develop the next wave. I think it's a collective effort to try to develop the next group of who you would say leaders. So whether it's in my room or a linebacker room, or it could be from the corner, you look from a collective of the whole defense of who could be that next guy. In terms of the safety room, you would like your seniors to be the vocal, kind of the guy that goes about it. So you have high expectations for Jeremiah Cooper to pick up and to have that, and I think he's trending toward that. But you look at a guy like Jameson Patton, who had a lot of leadership characteristics coming into the building, being a former quarterback. So he's used to speaking up, and I think we're trying to develop that during this spring. But he would be probably the first guy off the top of my head that I think has some of those leadership qualities that you're trying to develop the next guy.
I remember talking to Coop about Bo last year, and he almost got kind of emotional talking about it toward the end of the year, what he meant to him. Do you think that positively impacts that need for him to be that more vocal guy? And I know you said there are other guys, Jameis and others, but you kind of want a face for the room, and it seems like he could be that.
Yeah, I think he understands what it takes to be a leader, and I think he has to learn to be that within his own realm. Some guys, it doesn't come off as authentic if that's not who you really are. So when he does speak, he's a naturally quiet guy. He's a more go about his business, but he will pull a guy one-on-one and be able to do it. So I think as long as he leads within himself, I think guys will respect that and respond to it.
Deon, I think that's really interesting what you said about Patton coming from the quarterback and having maybe a little bit of that leadership. Could you kind of expand on that? How have you seen that quarterback influence help him out?
I think former quarterbacks are used to communicating, and I think leadership qualities are about your ability to influence others, and the number one ways to be able to communicate. And I think you communicate in two ways. You give communication, and then you have to be able to receive it. And he's been able to kind of take that and kind of run with it these last couple of weeks.
And then Marcus Neal, I think we might be talking to him later today. What kind of he had that big tackle game in the bowl. How has he kind of maybe rolled that into this spring and what he's done trending for this next year?
I think it was great experience for him in terms of preparing and then having the opportunity. Like he wasn't a starter going into it. Bo went down, and he came in, I think, pretty much played the entire second half. And it gave, anytime you do that, especially in that atmosphere, it kind of gives you confidence. So we tried to build off of that. And I think this past, winter, giving him as much, I would say, competition and things to really work on has kind of led to his spring. And I think there's a lot that he still has to develop in terms of his game. But it gives you confidence that you can go out and compete against a high level. So we're really just trying to peel back the layers in terms of keys and reads and being really technique sound and fundamentally sound every single snap.
Another guy that kind of trended up toward the end of the season was Tayshaun James. Kind of get into his, maybe was it kind of a roller coaster ride for him last season, and kind of getting thrown out there against Kansas, and then get into kind of how he finished and into the offseason.
Yeah, really proud of Tayshaun. You play behind Malik, you play behind Bo, and we kind of moved him kind of inside and outside and tried to figure out what's the best position for him. And every opportunity, it was a learning curve. He got beat up pretty bad against Kansas, and to see him respond the following few weeks, creating takeaways, making open field tackles, and being a guy that we leaned on to kind of finish out the season when Malik went down, it gives him great confidence that he can go out, kind of similar to like I was talking about with Marcus. So now it's all right, can you do that on an every single play basis? Can you do that consistently? And challenging those guys. And I think, this spring has been kind of a musical chairs. Like nobody has really a spot. Man, one time you may be with the first group, and the next rack you may be with the third group. And I think it's just giving guys that competitiveness of like, all right, I better come up and compete every single day to really see who's going to respond to it. And I think he's a guy compared with, you know, Marcus Neal and Drew Surgis and James, like all of those guys, I'm trying to figure out who's going to make that next jump, and it's really been a competitive spring from that standpoint.
You guys have addressed the safety position in the last couple recruiting classes pretty heavily, as you've gotten many of those guys in the spring, and I think most recently Patterson, like an early enrollee, and then even the recruiting class before. Who are some of the guys that are really standing out as maybe some potential next guys up?
Yeah, you look at Josh Patterson. You know, he's playing, and we feel confident about him moving into, you know, a field safety position and really just trying to catch him up from the fundamental standpoint. But I would say he's coming. Then you have Ethan, who will be here in the summer, who's kind of, you know, played receiver, played a little bit of D-line, so that'll be a transition for him. And then we have LaMarcus Hicks, who will be joining us in the summertime. So really, you know, it's kind of early to really dictate exactly where those guys will be penciled in at, but having Josh here this spring will be, I think, huge to see if he can help us in the fall.
And what about that recruiting class like the one before? How are those guys looking?
They're good. So between Marcus Neal and Carson Van Denter, you know, this is a big spring for him. It's kind of his first time. He was kind of a true athlete coming into it last year. You know, he probably could have helped us. He played a couple games on special teams, so now it's really focusing in kind of like the other guys of like assignment sound, every single play. Can you read a key? And then can you go? But you see him stand out from a athletic standpoint. He can run, he can jump, he can hit. Now it's just being able to kind of tame him, you know what I mean, and get him doing the things consistently.
Going back to Marcus, obviously that was a big recruiting win for you guys. What's the importance of being able to get guys like that on the field early and then seeing them contribute at a high level like he did playing in every game?
I missed the first portion of your question.
So Marcus was a big recruiting win for you guys. He gets on the field and has a lot of success and plays in, I think, 13 of your guys' 14 games.
Yep.
Just how much does that say about his ability to come in and be ready to produce for you guys?
Yeah, I think, you know, you got to be physically ready first and foremost to be able to play at this level. And he came in as a physical guy. Like I would say if you looked at his best trait, it's, man, that kid is physically defined. And now it's to get the mental to match the physical. And that's where we're probably going to see his biggest jump at if I had to look over the next 4 months before we get, you know, open up in Ireland. You're going to see the mental side of him has to continue to grow. But it shows that, like, man, if you come and you're ready and you can prepare, we'll figure out a way to put you on the field, whether it's special teams. You look at the way we used them early in the season last year, it was in like a spiral. You know what I mean? We had to figure out how can this kid help us because he just played extremely hard and he was a physical kid. And it's like, all right, if you can do it from that standpoint, it's on us as the coaches to be able to find a role for you.
You mentioned the mental challenges for him, understanding scheme. I imagine just football IQ stuff is what you're talking about there. How do you guys as a staff go about educating him in those areas?
Yeah, I think it's an all hands on deck approach, whether it's myself, whether it's Coach Mills, whether it's Coach Haycock, Coach Collins. You know, guys are in this building 24/7, you know, to be quite honest with you, and you just try to expose them to as much football. You know, we have like football school during the off season where guys are in here and it's, hey, today we're just going to learn about offensive formations. The next day maybe just motions. And you try to just literally peel back the layers of what you need to do to be successful, from when you get a call to lining up, identifying the formation. Man, what's my alignment from a width standpoint, from a depth standpoint? You just really try to slow it all down so kids can have the ability to not really think, and it just becomes a habit of you know, really getting a line and a sign and being able to execute through every single down.
When you graduate guys like Malik and Bo, what kind of challenges does that present for the safeties group? And you touched on the competitiveness earlier, and how have you noticed that kind of help spur the guys on during the off season?
I like it from a coaching standpoint because you've had a blueprint of what it takes. So now, all right, who's going to be the next wave of guys? It kind of reminds me of the 2022 season where, you know, we lost Asheem Young, we lost Craig McDonald. You know, we lost them. That wasn't through graduation, but you had to figure out who were going to be the next guys to step up. And I think, fortunately for me in the defense, like, we've had guys that maybe haven't been starters, but they've been within the scheme. They've been within the defense. So now you're trying to challenge guys. Can they play at that level that they've seen guys play at for the past couple years? So it's fun for me to be able to, like, hey, I love to rotate guys. Nobody's really a starter. So ultimately, you're going to challenge guys. And for me, it's can I coach guys up to be able to get to that standard? So I like it. It's a challenge for myself, and it's a challenge for the room. And they know that's where we're at right now in the part of the season. It doesn't really have to be defined right now. So every single day is a approach of, can we all be consistent in everything that we're doing?